You are listening to the Bag of Games Game Out Loud podcast for Tuesday, January 29th, 2013. Hello and welcome to the Game Out Loud podcast, brought to you by Bag of Games. I am your host this week, Colin Cooper, and I have with me the rumbling rambler, Ryan DeBrawl.
Great to be here.
Yes, that was a good response. I love that. And we also have, of course, the juxtaposing juggernaut, Jordan Rusnak.
Woo! Let's do a podcast.
Yes, and Rob.
Hi.
Rob.
Hi, Rob. Hey guys, so we're gonna do a podcast, or what are we doing?
We sure are, Rob.
Jazz.
Let's kick it off with some video games. What do you guys say? So let's talk about what we've been playing this week. Ryan, what have you been playing this week?
A couple things. I actually finally sat down with Mark the Ninja. I know probably all of us bought it on the Steam sale, the winter Steam sale, but I didn't put more than an hour or two into the game, and I was actually surprised by how far it developed. When I first started up, you sneak up on people in a 2D platform, and you stab them, and it's all good. It's not offensive to the stealth genre or anything like that. But what I was really surprised at is, as you progress through the game, you pick up new skills and new tactics, and actually throughout the entire game, every single level, every single section of level has something new, like either a play on an old idea or new enemies or upgraded enemies. So it's constantly changing and different. So I was really impressed by how the game mechanics actually evolved. In the beginning, all you did was sneak up and stab people, but by the end, you're dangling like a spider with a grappling hook and grabbing people off the ground and then pulling them up and hanging them off light poles and stuff to terrorize other people, which put them on guard. So you can get behind them while they're terrified looking at this guy tethered up to a light pole. So it's actually really, really quite good. And it has a surprisingly neat twist ending. So if you have the game and you haven't gone through it, it's got one of those, decide your path endings. And it was actually kind of, it was actually kind of a difficult decision for me to make, and I ended up making what would technically be the wrong choice, I guess, the bad ending. But it was because
You chose the bad ending on the first playthrough? Usually you do White Knight, don't you?
Who does that?
Yeah,
It's not so much as which is the bad ending, it's what you feel is the bad ending. You're like, in my instincts tell me that this is the way, but you grow. You get to know characters, and you have one character decide with or another. It's like, what they're saying kind of makes sense, but I don't want to believe it. So I chose path A. It's like, crap.
Wait, so it's a push button ending? It's like, welcome to the end. Which ending would you like?
Yes, it is. It is a
like
push button.
Human Revolution or Mass Effect or whatever. You know what I mean?
Like, same deal.
But with that kind of game, they can get away with it because it's it's not this huge thing.
Yep, and it's made by the Shank guys. That's a company.
Right.
I bought both Shank games, and I liked them, but I didn't love them. But I like the art style a lot. It's one of those companies that you want to succeed, like you want them to find their niche, and I think they really did with Mark the Ninja. Yeah, I think it was excellent.
I think it's an interesting thing to hear people talk about a kind of a push-button ending. I've never gotten your opinion on other push-button endings, but, sometimes we'll hear just the rabble from the streets about a push-button ending. But if it's put into a different context of a different game, we're like, it was pretty awesome that it had this push-button ending.
Yeah.
It's such an interesting way to look at it.
Well, I think it all measures up to how much, that game... how much of an investment you have in that game. So a game like Mass Effect, where your choices affect the actual game world, I think people expected more of a immersive ending than a push button ending. Something like a cartoon aspect side scroller like Mark of the Ninja, it's completely acceptable to have a push button ending because that's kind of like what you're doing. You're pressing prompts, like you're getting prompts. Like when you're playing Mass Effect, you don't feel like you're just putting in prompts and stuff like that. You feel like you're doing this, you're building this rapport, you're doing these things, and to have a push button ending, it's something at the end of something that is so immersive as Mass Effect. I can understand why people didn't enjoy that as much as they would say using this in Mark of the Ninja.
No, I totally agree with you. Yeah.
they felt cheated by the ending. Whereas in Mark the Ninja, 6 to 10 hour game, I mean, it's just a romp. You don't have to become all that invested in the storyline. So yeah, I mean, it was nice throughout, and I actually enjoyed the ending, which is pretty rare in general in games that the ending is satisfying.
Is it really 6 to 10 hours?
Yeah, I think that's
It's longer than like
accurate.
two Call of Duty games put together.
Yeah, I only made it. I only made
set
it like
pieces,
4
though.
hours in, and
Right.
I thought I was getting near the end, but I guess not.
And then besides that, I've actually been kind of obsessively playing Mech Warrior 4 again. I don't know if you guys are big mech fans or anything like that, but I've always loved mechs, especially the Mech Warrior series. And I found the CDs, I dusted them off, and I installed them. And I wasn't expecting anything special. I expected not a Win32 program or something, But surprisingly, I installed it, and it worked flawlessly right out of the gate. And I got into the Mech Warrior Online beta a couple months back, and it just didn't grab me. I mean, the game looks awesome. It's true to form of the mech combat that you remember, but it's just a multiplayer deathmatch game when it gets right down to it. The thing I enjoyed about the Mech Warrior games was, you have like, objectives, even if it is just, escort this group of tanks to deliver supplies or, fight off these
escort mission.
But it actually having those missions really lends a lot of meaning to the action that's going on, whereas Mech Warrior Online and the sequels for Mech Warrior 4, Mech Warrior 4 Mercenaries, it's just they send you out on these arbitrary missions, and it just felt kind of pointless. But yeah, I've been playing the heck out of Mech Warrior 4, and it's so satisfying to like customize your mechs and then see how they perform in the field.
You wrote an article on Bag of Games for this, right?
Yes,
About how
yes, I did.
Stands the test of time, essentially?
Oh yeah, it definitely did. I mean, I had to do some tweaks in the INI file to, get it to graphically shine again, but yeah, it's as good as I remember. And if you got a copy, and it's in fact everybody else remembers it pretty fondly too, because I tried to see how much it would cost if somebody wanted to pick it up today. About $75. It's a collector's item now.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Wow, really?
Yeah.
I've noticed that those old 90s sim games age better than most. I've been playing TIE Fighter. I think I talked about it a few weeks ago on the podcast.
Sure.
Yeah.
And the things that are set up like Sims, you don't notice the old graphics as much, and they still play really, really well these days. So I'd love to go back and try Mech Warrior again.
Cool,
Yeah, I mean,
cool.
it's definitely worth it.
Nice. Jordan, what were you going to say?
I'll say I never really got into the Mech Warrior games. My brother used to play them, and he had, I believe he had one of the setups, like the actual
Oh, whoa.
peripherals for playing.
Oh yeah, wow, that's pretty hardcore.
He used to love the Mech Warrior games, and I think he's actually interested in Mech Warrior Online, but we'll have to get his opinion on it when it comes out, because I remember every time I used to come over to Oregon, he'd be playing a Mech Warrior game. So
Here's the real question, though. Why don't we have real mechs yet? It seems like it would be pretty badass on the battlefield. You know what I mean? And not that technologically advanced, right? Or am I just totally out
Well,
of
it is because of the. I've actually looked into it. You can find plenty of YouTube videos of people trying to make bipedal robots. The problem is, in the hip action, Oh well, seriously,
a giant
though.
Osmo that you get in,
Yeah. I think but like I was saying, it's actually, when you think about walking, there's a lot more hips, how your pelvis rotates in and how it shifts from side to side. So it's actually a pretty complex system. People just think about the legs going back and forth and up and down. They don't think about the actual, the controlled falling and all the extra stuff that goes on.
That's true. I'm sure DARPA's got something on the DARPA's got something on the agenda there. I blame
It's not
Obama
walking.
personally.
it's falling with style.
Yeah. Cool. Thanks, Ryan.
Yep.
Anything else we want to touch on before I toss it over to Jordan?
Really briefly, actually, I actually read a book called Roadside Picnic this week. It was published in 1971, but it went on to become the inspiration for the Stalker series. So it's really interesting. It's actually about basically aliens land on Earth, and then they take off the next day, and what they left in their wake is all this junk and garbage. That's why it's called the Roadside Picnic. Basically, to paraphrase really quickly, imagine a picnic in a meadow, and people get out and they get picnic baskets and they pitch tents and they light a fire, and the animals, birds, and insects that are watching the whole night through in horror come out in the morning and they find all these scattered rags and burnt bulbs and stuff. And that's basically what the novel in the Stalker series about is. People enter this, what they call the zone, and it's filled with all these alien artifacts and strange things, and most of them deadly. But I thought it was a really good novel, and like I said, it became the inspiration for the Stalker games. I believe the author of the novel, it might just be the same name, this Boris Sturgatsky, was the lead game designer on the Stalker series, and their studio shut down now, but they're currently making an MMO FPS called Survivorarium or something like that. So yeah, it was an interesting book.
I might pick that up. I'm always looking for a good book, and I really like books of that nature. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean it was extremely different from, I like sci-fi a lot, and most sci-fi first contact stories only go two ways. There's the we come in peace and we are your equals and we're going to help you, or there's they immediately blow up the White House kind. Then this is a kind of different story in that they came, they left, and they never even noticed us. And yet what they left behind, their crumpled gum wrappers and stuff, changes the course of human history because it's so advanced, but we take it for granted. They just take it for granted. They just discarded it. Perpetual motion machines. Never-ending batteries. Whatever.
Now, I have the Stalker games. I thought they were going to be more like radiation poisoning.
That's what I thought
stuff.
too, actually.
That's the big difference. Is Roadside Picnic is aliens, but you're right. Stalker is based off a second meltdown in the Chernobyl nuclear power plant, but it basically the effects are the same. It changes the physics of the zone, the exclusion zone, and creates these anomalies and artifacts. Tornadoes that spawn out of thin air and rip people apart, or zones of gravity that suck you in and turn you into a carbon cube no bigger than an inch. So
that sounds dangerous.
Yeah,
and unpleasant.
Cool. Well, thanks, Ryan. Jordan, what have you been playing this week?
Well, the one game I want to talk about that I thought was mentionable that I played this week was Real Lives 2010. Now, I tweeted about this.
You got out of the house?
Yeah, back in 2010.
And traveled back in time, yeah.
Yes, exactly.
Every now and then we do have to leave our computers, screens.
Well, this was a game. It's a simulator. So you don't actually have you're not moving around using WASD or your keyboard or stuff. You're clicking buttons to do different things. So you hit live, and you are born somewhere as some sex to some family. Okay, so
dramatic pause.
No, I apologize. I had to. I had to burp. So you, what are you laughing at?
Just burp, Jordan. Just burp.
Blech. Anyway, so I was born to a family in China, and I was a little girl. And then you have a health bar. You have resistance, your intelligence, all these stats you can sit there and watch, and you hit age a year. You click a button and it ages a year. And then it tells you what happened in that year. So, I cut my first tooth. I learned to crawl. I learned to walk. So all these things. And as you age, you get to start choosing your leisure time activities, which will affect your attributes and stuff like that. And you can age all the way to death. So I ended up dying at the age of 65. I illegally immigrated to the U.S., because I wasn't making enough money where I was to legally do it. So I illegally moved to the U.S. and started my own company. You can start your companies and invest money in things and open bank accounts and play the stock market a little bit. A basic version. So you have high risk, medium risk, and low risk stocks and bonds that you can invest money in. You can get stricken with different diseases. Things will happen to your family. So, and then the area you're in. So, there was a famine in China, but my family was not directly related.
So is it like Oregon Trail style tragedies, where everybody's catching dysentery constantly,
or is it real life terrible nightmare tragedies, like people are getting cancers and people are getting things like that?
Yes,
is it supposed to be. This sounds like the worst game I've ever heard of. It
sounds kind of interesting, actually.
That's like life, though. I'm doing that. I'm already doing that.
No, I think it
basically
sounds
live
interesting.
Life in 2 hours. And this unintentionally last night became a party game. I'm not even kidding. I had a few friends over, and I had one buddy. I showed it to him the night before, and he lived a life and got really into it. And he actually ended up being a boy born in India, and he ended up outliving one of his grandchildren. Like he ended up being like 95, and just rich. Like he worked really hard. He did. You go to school, right? But then depending on the area you're in and what responsibilities and stuff you might have as a kid, you will get pulled out of school. So we actually had to create a character because we played about 9 lives, and the last one we actually created a character because we wanted to see what happens when you actually get to go to college and do stuff like that, because all our characters never got to go to college. They hardly ever finished high school. Like the first character I got that finished high school was so dumb. Like she only got through because she wanted to, like she just studied and studied and studied. So it was really interesting. And then I kept trying to apply for college, and her entire life she couldn't go to college, so she kept working these crap jobs and trying to get money. And she lived in Rio de Janeiro, Brazil. And I just decided to let her stay there her entire life. But then her life sucked so bad that she ended up just like smoking and drinking and becoming an alcoholic and dying at 35.
Oh, dude, I'm sorry.
Where do you get this game?
If you type in Real Lives 2010, you can get it. You can download a trial version from the company that creates it. It's more of a simulator than it is a game, but this thing it definitely has intrigue for me. And you can, if you create a character, you can literally start like anywhere in the world and just set everything up the way you want. But I like the just live, and it creates a random person for you with random stats. Like I had a buddy that his intelligence was 5 out of 100.
I'm looking at the game now. Realize your mother has died at age 58 from a stroke. Okay, or learn more.
Yeah, pretty much. Well, the cool thing is everything that they have happened to you. If you hit that learn more button, it will tell you where the statistic came from and why it happened. So, like the guy who had a 5 intelligence was in Africa and in a poorer area of Africa, so they kept getting hookworm or malaria. Like they would have rebouts of malaria constantly. And it takes into effect, like you can go to your stats page and you can see how things went over your life with all of your stats. But then if you go to self, or family, it shows you what you have as far as where you are in the world. So your income versus the world versus your community. Then you have like, do you have running water, safe water, a car, any radios, TVs, anything like that. It tells you what your family has based on your income. And it's really, really cool to try to manipulate those things and see how you can do it and see how the game limits you. Because say you're a woman in Africa, you don't, like it says you will probably commonly face sexual discrimination, and it stops you from getting work. It stops, like you apply and it's like, well, you applied and you were able to do it, you were passed up for the job. It's like, oh crap. So you sit there and you
see here they actually source actual data, like source International Disaster Database, OFDA, exactly. for the amount of people that died in Ethiopia from food shortages yesterday.
Yes, like I actually we had a character in Ethiopia, and that's one of the main things was famine. And famine will affect areas, like these disasters will affect areas, and they'll say that like either if it says this area is having this and it says you are not directly affected, or if it says this has hit your area, it'll happen to you, or you can like you'll lose money because you have to pay more for food or something, and that might be most of your income, right? You just lost most of it. But if you're like in a more well-off country, you don't find that stuff as much. It doesn't happen as randomly, and you've got the option like to invest more money, and land is cheaper, and you can just invest money and play the stock market. And sometimes you lose everything, and sometimes you invest 20,000, you end up like a multimillionaire. The guy who only had 5% life ended up, or 5%, sorry, he had 5% intelligence, ended up retiring at 30 and living till 60, just on what he invested. So he was dumber than a stump, but he knew those stocks. It's a really fun game to like, and it definitely has a lot of replay value depending on how you want things to go. Because I think it's fun, and I found it fun and interesting. And
Yeah, I mean,
feel
it seems like it would make you think.
it's interesting, maybe educational tool, but as a recreational thing to either, I don't understand. This is tough for me to get as a recreation. I
Colin
totally
just
get it.
hates to learn.
No,
Yeah, exactly.
I like to learn. If you're going to sit down and say this is a learning tool, hey guys, there's a great new learning tool out there
I think
that
that's
is
how I
great
put
for
it.
educational
It's
purposes, and it's great for this. But if you want to sit down for the evening and play a game, this is not a game. Like, if you're going to play, like, what if I live in America and it's like your character was born in Colorado, like, crazy.
I
Oh
moved to
my
Colorado.
God. Like, I'm a white guy from Colorado in this game, or maybe it's crazy if I'm a black woman from wherever, but like, I understand that, like, as a tool to maybe, like, as an educational tool only, or maybe it's good for classrooms, but I don't see the lure of this as a game personally. I don't see like why I would want to do, why would I want to suspend my disbelief for someone else's tragedy.
It seems to me, yeah. I mean, I can see where you're coming from because it does seem kind of heavy in areas. I mean, I'm pulling up screenshots and there's some really dark stuff. You've been sexually abused by your father. What do? Do nothing, seek help, retaliate violently, or leave home. And then the stat on the bottom is yearly incidents of sexual abuse is 3.2 per 1,000 children. Then it sources the data. It's like, ugh. Like,
oh man, sign me up.
I mean, it's a heavier experience, but I can see how it's fascinating to be able to explore the human condition from various, perspectives. So I'm interested, and I'm definitely going to download it.
Well, see, I think I put on Twitter, I got done living my first life. This is an excellent learning tool / sim because it definitely. I downloaded it thinking game and got this, and at first I was like, okay, this is really dumb. Like this, I'm just gonna be sitting here clicking age a year, and I just read what happens. But then you get to the underlying systems, like trying to manage your stats, your happiness, trying to figure those things out, trying to figure out how to make the most money out of the situation you're in. You know, trying to find a wife, and so say for example, my friend got married. Right, and that gave him a happiness spike, but then all of a sudden, like his happiness just started plummeting, because it turned out that wasn't the one for him. And if you're not looking at your stats, you're not going to realize that your character is just unhappy, which leads to depression, which can lead to, substance abuse. Like all of a sudden it'll just say, oh, you've now become addicted to an illicit substance. Or sometimes when you're a kid, it'll give you the choice. Do you want to smoke? Do you want to, you have friends that smoke. Do you want to join them? Yes, no. They have friends that drink. Do you want to join them? Yes, no. You have friends who are doing illicit substance.
No. I mean, I get this as an interesting tool still. I'm still in the same. I get this. It sounds like an interesting tool for education for people that want to get outside their experience. I get that, but I don't see it as a game. I don't see it as a thing I would want to play for recreation. I would see it as like, I enjoy this. I listen to NPR probably 2 to 3 hours a day. I could see it maybe filling some of that role of trying to get a perspective of, of experiences around the globe. When you listen to like BBC Global or Democracy Now! Or something, you get experience. You hear things that you wouldn't normally hear, and you get different experiences. It's not like you're getting some sort of. But if you're just looking at stats, you're still not getting some sort of out of body experience to get what sexual abuse is like in Africa, or what having your mom die of cancer is like in this game when it could happen in real life. You know what I mean? It's very weird to me.
Yeah, I could see how it could sort of bother somebody, because a lot of these lives seemed like they end in cautionary tales. I mean, I'm looking at a screenshot now. You have been murdered at age 4. About 1 in every 2,600 people in your age group, sex, and socioeconomic class in India are murdered each year. Like, geez, that's pretty heavy, and it's certainly, I could see where it would turn people off, because it doesn't seem very enjoyable to live vicariously the sad and tragic events of the world. But I mean, I think it's a good thought experiment. I mean, I'm interested.
I agree with that.
I definitely don't. I don't think it would be for everyone, because it does sound like it could be a major downer.
Well, and that's the thing. I mean, it's just like you don't know when those things are going to happen. You don't know if they're going to happen. They come out of nowhere, and so it adds that sort of suspense. Like this could happen. I mean, and I realize
the suspense
that
of being alive.
I know, but see, if it happens to you in real life, it really sucks. In the game, you're just like, oh. And there's a strange thing when you're watching these things happen and you're watching these stats and you're paying attention to your family and seeing what they're doing and what's happening with them. I had my he got way more invested in this than I did. He was like, "Oh, dude, my dad just died." Like, and he actually sounded like, "Dude." Like, it actually hit him a little bit, just because you're watching these things, you're trying to help, you're trying to do these things in this game, and yeah, it's definitely heavy. It's definitely got aspects of it that it's like, whoa, like I did not expect that. Like, I did not expect my character to get alcoholism because he was so unhappy and I wasn't following the stats, and he then died, like I said, at 35 due to liver disease. And the crazy thing is they take all your choices and what you've done throughout the game, and at the end, after you die, you can hit more on your death thing, and it'll give you an obituary, which takes into account everything you've done. So if you were like religious, it'll talk about that, like what you did in your spare times, like how everything. It's kind of an interesting and fun little wrap up for each person. Although some of them are pretty depressing, like lived alone, homeless,
I've gotta
and
say. Anyway, I think we got to move on a little bit. We've been talking about a very big downer thing that's saying. It sounds like I don't even know if it's. I don't even know if I would honestly consider that a game. Seriously, but I mean, I see it's definitely relevant to talk about here, but I don't know if I would see that as a game personally. It seems like a reference tool more. But anyway, go ahead.
Oh, I just said, just give it a try. Like the download's free. You can just try it out. You don't got to buy it. So
yeah, it seems like it's not. It doesn't seem like it's for everyone though, because it does seem to have a high degree of morbidity, and maybe because it's all based on stats, it's kind of disheartening to know those terrible things.
It's got 100% morbidity. It's you die. Like
if you need to get out of your like American mindset and you really like Football Manager 2 and all those kind of games, like stat watching games, this might be the thing for you. Anyway, I think we gotta move on a little bit here, but thank you, Jordan. Rob, what have you been playing this week?
Nothing.
All right, moving on. Must have played something, right?
No, I played a little bit of Breath of Death 7. It's
yeah.
What are the names of these guys? They also did Cthulhu Saves the World. They made.
Did we get that in a pack? Did you buy that on a Steam sale?
Yes.
I feel like I did. Yeah.
Yeah. I've had it for a long time. I haven't played it yet. It's pretty fun. This company makes really old school kind of 2D 8-bit RPGs in the style of the old Ultima games, or even kind of the really, really old Final Fantasies, and maybe not too terribly unlike Chrono Trigger, although the production values definitely aren't as high. And they're very funny and kind of satirical, and it's a good old time. It just plays a lot like an SNES RPG, turn-based.
Yeah. I know the like Cthulhu Saved the World. That's the same company. They're much more writing focused. It's almost like that style's a vehicle to get their writing across.
Yeah, this feels a little more like it's focused on the RPG end. There is writing in it, and it is kind of funny, but it's a lot more mechanics based, a lot more about walking around on the world map and getting into fights and learning your magic system and leveling up your characters and all that stuff. So,
Rob, have you ever played what is it called? That Penny Arcade Adventures on the Rain Slick Precipice of Darkness?
I haven't played Precipice of Darkness games, but I'm under the impression they're pretty similar. In fact, this company also made the third one of those.
Oh, it did. Oh, okay.
Well, yeah, because they went 8-bit style with the third one, right? Because the other ones were pretty Final Fantasy-esque, as in like side-scrolling, like 3-dimensional stuff. But yeah, they went 8-bit style. I saw that for the first time. I didn't realize they'd done that. Like, I think I saw that this weekend. I was like, that's pretty cool looking.
The Penny Arcade games are fun. Like it did again feel like to me like the same thing I just said. It feels like a vehicle for really fun writing. Like the gameplay was kind of like meh, The animations were pretty blah, but it was fun characters and like fun. Really, Penny Arcade's funny. They just are. So.
Yep, I agree. I concur.
Yeah, so that's really the only thing I was playing this week. I spent a lot of time playing Chrono Trigger for our discussion and just doing other stuff. But I'm glad I got some time in on that, because I think if you like those old RPG games, for the couple bucks it costs on Steam to pick this and Cthulhu up, definitely worth checking out.
And I think it was literally a couple bucks, right? It was like $2. I think when we bought it, right?
Yeah, it was super duper cheap.
Oh, okay. Yeah, totally. Cool. Well, Rob, is there anything else you want to mention before we, I guess, head over to me and take a break?
No, I think that pretty much covers it.
Okay, cool. Thanks, Rob. All right, on to me. I just played a couple things this week. I do want to first say I finally beat Dark Souls, so that's done. I beat
Are you
Dark
proud of
Souls.
yourself?
I am so proud of myself.
I'm proud of you, man. I'm proud of you.
Thank you. I remember there was a time when I think I talked to Rob, and Rob was like, "I can't believe I thought you wouldn't like this game," and I like become obsessed with this game for some reason. I mean, it seems like a game I wouldn't like, I guess, but
it got its dark claws into you and wouldn't let go.
It did, man. I'm on my New Game Plus, and I'm plowing through my New Game Plus. I've already rung the first bell and cleared the depths and beat the Gaping Dragon and all that stuff, and I played for like 2.5 hours or something. So, New Game Plus is cool though because all the enemies get twice as much health and do twice as much damage essentially. So,
oh yeah, fucking fantastic! That just sounds great.
Yeah, but I'm so good at it now. I'm so good at Dark Souls. I'm like I just feel good at it. Like I literally wear like lighter armor. Like so I could get hit more because I want to wear different rings and I make these different choices because I'm more confident that I won't have to take the damage at all anymore, you know? When I take the damage I'm fine. But because I still have upgraded stuff, but I'm more confident in my abilities. Like, the game doesn't scare me at all anymore. You know, even bosses, I'll run in and I've killed every boss on the first try so far. So
you should do this run through like naked, as close to naked as the game will let you get.
Well, I'm pretty much.
We mean you, not your character.
Well, I'm naked right now. Okay.
No, but, getting ready for our webcam show.
I am going.
Whoa! What kind of show are you guys doing?
Hey. I am gonna do my next playthrough. I'm gonna do like I don't even know if I'll finish my New Game Plus, but I am gonna do a new fresh playthrough as a sorcerer cast, like a magic build, because that is a very different game if you do that. I played as like a heavy tank with armor and big weapons and stats and all that. Now I have to playing with magic is like playing. It's just tougher. You have to wear stuff that you just. 1 or 2 hits will kill you from anything, you know, so you have to be super aware of your surroundings and use spells, but your spells can get very powerful, but it's just a much harder playthrough, so I'm looking forward to that.
Forgive me. I have the game, and I'm amiss as I have not played much of it. Does your mana still need to have something taken to refill it, like a JRPG, or does it fill up over time?
Mana? Like, is it life?
For your spell.
Spell points.
Really?
Oh.
Really? Life, mana? What?
I'm not a big like fantasy guy at all. It's
called mana in Chrono Trigger, isn't it?
No, it's
magic points.
Yeah. Anyway, your magic points. That's actually you only have. It doesn't work like that. Actually, how it works is you have a spell, and you use a catalyst for the spell, which is like a wand essentially. But there's so many different kinds of wands which have X amount of power associated with them too, like a weapon. And then you have that spell, depending on what kind of spell it is and how upgraded it is, has a finite amount of uses until you go to a bonfire again.
Okay, that's way better. So in Demon Souls, you actually had a mana bar, like the blue bar you would have for magic. And this bar just... It did not refill, and magic was so costly that it was just another one of the like item management things. It's like, okay, well, I have to be able to buy these, I have to find these, I have to spend money on this, because if you're going to be a spellcaster, you can only cast many spells as you have magic. So you get in trouble and you don't have any magic potions or whatever they use to refill your mana, you were screwed.
Well, that's what I'm saying though. Like
in Demon Souls is terrible.
You have to have magic slots, right? It's the same thing, kind of. Like, you have to have slots which you upgrade. So you start out with 1 slot, so you have 1 spell, you know, that you can use. And whatever spell you choose might have 4 uses. You use that spell 4 times, it's done. Gone forever till you're at a bonfire again. Or 6 or 12 or whatever the spell is. Spells have different uses associated with them. But what's cool about being a magic build also is you can find some very, very powerful melee weapons because... some weapons scale with your stats. So if you're...
Oh, that is interesting.
Yeah, so if your intelligence or whatever or magic stats are high, that weapon, you know, maybe it has a 90 damage or whatever, which is, you know, fair, but it's pretty bad. It might have next to it, and the whole scaling system is so freaking hard to understand, but you'll see like all these different stats next to the regular stats, and those will be the real stats that you can do. So it could be like 90, but on the other side it'll say like plus 300 or something, you know. So the weapon is actually insane with the stats you have. So you have to pay attention. You have to really pay attention to like a bunch of different statistics for the weapons when you're doing a magic build. So it's going to be a much different playthrough. Anyway, moving on. That was awesome, but I did play, Jordan. I finally got to Hotline Miami. So
yeah, my game of the year.
Yeah, your game of the year. I only played about half an hour of it because I got frustrated, but I really thought it was incredibly unique and incredibly interesting. I can see that it's got like there's something it's saying that's bigger than itself about violence, and it's so weird and surreal too. Like the music is incredible.
I love it. I just randomly look at that the main theme song when you're in your apartment or just moving around. I'll get that stuck in my head randomly.
That's such a weird part of the game. Like whenever you go back to your apartment when you get a job, it's like the music and the way it is, it feels like it's in slow motion. So it has this surreal feel to it where you almost kind of contemplate on the violence you've just caused, you know, because they make it like in the first level when you're bashing people's heads in and blood is going everywhere. You go to your car, which is a DeLorean, by the way, which is awesome. You vomit in front of your car, you know, at these terrible things that you've done. And so when like that, I was like, wow, that's interesting. And the way that it's just done, everything's very slow in the game. Everything's very deliberate in the game, besides the combat, which is very frenetic and fast paced. But when you're back at your apartment, it feels surreal, as in you're supposed to kind of take in what you've done and the kind of person you are. And it's really, really interesting.
Well, things start to change in the apartment as well. You can also find things to click on there randomly, and you'll notice like that things are going in the apartment and things are changing while you're there for the few seconds that you typically are there. How many missions have you gotten through?
4.
Oh, so yeah, you stopped on 4?
Yeah.
4 is frustrating, man.
It is. There's like a guy right by the door that you can knock over, but then there's a guy with a shotgun right over to the left, and there's a guy with a machine gun. Oh no, there's a guy with a machine gun right over to your left, and there's a guy with a shotgun up the hallway. But you start with no weapons, you know.
Yeah. You can throw weapons. Always remember that.
Yeah, I was thinking that like
use the lock on.
My strategy was going to be like knock that guy over, but don't kill him yet. Grab his knife, like knife the fucking machine gun guy, grab his gun, and then kill everybody else.
And also, if you knock people down using doors, you can use the knife to easily kill them.
Yeah. Like, look, all I got to do is knock the guy down here, grab his knife, kill that guy, grab his machine gun, and shoot the other guys.
Only video games allow you to go on this certain thought train, like, how to murder 3 people in sequence. I wish I had developed the skill better.
Well, see, Colin, funny. You can also, like I said, with thrown weapons, the reason I say that, bladed weapons can actually be used and thrown to kill instead of knock down, which other weapons will. So you can knock that guy over, grab his knife, move over, lock on the other guy, throw it, throttle the other guy, break his brain, and then go grab the gun and get the guy down the hallway.
What's fucked up is like if I get back to him, say I did. Now I'm rethinking this because of Ryan's comment. And now it's kind of hilarious, but like I come in, knock this guy down, take his knife, kill the guy with the machine gun, right? Grab his machine gun. Like the guy with the shotgun comes down, I shoot him, kill him, right? Now the guy is knocked down on the ground, so I have to. What's fucked up about the game is like when the guy's knocked down on the ground, you don't just go shoot them or hit them with something. You literally get on top of them and you smash their head into the ground until it explodes in blood.
Yeah, you throttle them and just whack. Unless you have a knife, then he'll cut their throat.
Mm-hmm. It is,
and you can actually get instant kills if you hit A and you have a knife and you're behind somebody that's already there. You'll instantly kill them, like stealth kill.
Yeah.
But what's so interesting about the game is it's insane violence, obviously, like we're saying, because we're like planning these crazy murders. But what's interesting about it is how aware of itself it is with the violence, and it's almost social critique on violence in media. Like that's what it's kind of trying to be, I feel like, personally, so far.
So do I. I definitely feel that's the way, and you'll get that more as the game progresses. Like that is what that game is as at the core.
Right. Yeah. No. That totally comes through. It's so interesting. Yeah. There's not really a story, but there is a pretty engaging story actually, and its through line, its purpose is fascinating. It's much more of a deep game than I thought it could ever be.
I agree. Like it had much more to it than I ever expected, and it just grabbed me hook, line, and sinker. And wait till you get some of the farther levels where you're. Have you run into dogs yet?
No.
Or how about let's see here, glass, like enemies being able to see you through glass, but you can't get to them.
No. How long is the game?
I believe it's 14 missions.
Okay, so how long did it take you to beat the game?
Like 5-6 hours.
Okay.
Just because I got stuck on some of those, and number 4 is pretty hard, but then number 6 is difficult. But then once you get those ones down, those ones become some of the most fun ones, the difficult ones. And
because you can just combo them. So because you get, like, the game rewards you for combos, and recklessness is one of the like stats, I think.
Yep. If you stay still for too long and like plan for too much, it'll actually hurt your score at the end.
So if you just like run in and do that whole sequence of events we've been talking about, like that rewards you. It's like, oh, that was awesome when you went in there and knocked that guy over, took his knife through it, and killed the machine guy, grabbed the machine, killed the shotgun guy, and then beat that guy's head in. That was
Sounds
awesome.
like they want you to spend all your free time thinking about ways to murder people in sequence.
I guess.
Exactly.
It makes me know how bad at it I'd be, essentially. Because like I fail so often. So I'd be like, I'd see some place and I'd be like, all right, all I gotta do is come in, knock that guy over,
bang,
grab
you're
his
dead.
knife,
So
perfectly
there you go.
throw it there. Like, yeah, I would like come in, knock that guy over, and he wouldn't even knock over. He'd trip forward, I'd trip and fall on my face, and he would shoot me. That's how that would end. Anyway, thanks guys for telling me what you've been playing this week. We are going to take a break now, but when we come back, it's Classic Game Day. So we're going to talk about Chrono Trigger, which everyone hates and no one has ever heard of. So we'll see you guys in a minute. Enjoy the break.
Game out loud. Game out loud.
All right, welcome back. Hope you enjoyed the break. We did. So what we're doing today is we're going to talk about a really, really indie title for Classic Game Day. It's called Chrono Trigger.
Chrono is the H.
Yeah. It's I don't know what it means. I don't know. It's time or something.
Chrono
Anyway,
Trigger.
No. We're talking about Chrono Trigger. Obviously,
we're shooting time.
This is obviously a really famous old title. It's like cult classic. I don't even know if it's cult classic. It's actually popular, modern, like popular classic. This is a game that is in the hearts and minds of many people, myself included. So what we've all done is we've gone and replayed it in its current state, and we're going to talk about how it's aged and how it's affected us personally, what we think of it, and the influence it's had from when it was created till now. So I'm going to start off with the person who I know I'm going to argue with the most, and that's going to be Jordan. So Jordan, what did you think of Chrono Trigger?
Oh man, the sprites, they're fantastic. I will give it that. When you first jump into the time loop and you get that whole crazy 3-dimensional thing going, that was fantastic.
Now, you've never played this, just for the record. This is your first playthrough of this game.
Indeed it is. It is my first playthrough.
No nostalgia for you here. So this is like as clean as we can get it, pretty much. Right? From a new perspective.
Indeed, from an outsider who actually does not I have to say that I used to play JRPGs, no problem. I love Legend of Dragoon, Final Fantasy, games like that when I was a kid, but they just have lost their appeal to me now. So playing this game,
cut to the chase,
was kind of a struggle. Yeah, I don't like it. Not that I don't like it. It's the fact that I may not be to the part that will make me love it, that you keep speaking of, because I got hung up on Magus. But I made a mistake earlier on in the game, and I went to the wrong time zone, and basically ended up exploring that entire area at a low level when I'm not supposed to be that low level. So, I mean, it was kind of difficult, but not too bad. But I ended up like power leveling past where I needed to be for any sort of like level cap for an area. So I had no problem like beating these huge bosses and doing these things, and everyone's talking about, oh, this amazing story, and I don't see this amazing story. I see an excuse for somebody to make a game where you go back in time, which is fine, and I think the battle system is fun, and I think the different time streams you go to are interesting, but This game just does not have what I find to be a very compelling story, and plus it's a JRPG, so for me that's a little hard to get past. But I do enjoy the whole combination magic system and the combat system, as like the random encounters are somewhat avoidable. I do enjoy that. Like you can see the creatures jumping around on the screen, and you can move past them.
That was a big thing. Yeah, that was a big thing back in the day, actually being able to see the enemies on the overworld. I mean, previously, talk about hate for JRPGs, you'd walk 2 steps, you get into a battle, walk 2 steps, another flash, and, it was just, that really dragged on for me. But with Chrono Trigger, you're right. I mean, you actually battle on the same map that is the overworld. So for me, that was a huge improvement over in the genre. And nowadays, every RPG basically adopts that now. You see the enemies before you get randomly attacked by them.
And Chrono Trigger even went that next... Oh, sorry, go ahead, Rob.
Well, I was just going to say that they also don't do random battles on the world map, which is a huge advantage over Final Fantasy, I think. My least favorite thing about playing a Final Fantasy game is dicking around on that world map and every 5 seconds getting sucked into a battle.
Yeah. Also, it's kind of cool. I mean, they give the illusion of like some of those enemies engaging in things like in their lifestyle before they attack you. Like, you'll come to a room and they're like cooking or they're playing soccer or something, and then they're like, "Oh God, an enemy!"
And they see you and they jump into action. Yeah. I do remember early on. There's 2 imps playing catch with a roly-poly little green animal. It's like, oh, that is. I mean, you got to consider that. Sprite work is pretty difficult. It's time-consuming work having to design something pixel by pixel and actually make it look good. So to add those extra little touches in there, it really adds a lot of character to the whole world,
Right.
Makes it feel a lot more alive.
I do want to say something else about what you just said, Jordan, too. You said the story, you don't see the story. Now, let me ask you a question, Jordan. What's your favorite movie?
What's my favorite movie?
Do you have a favorite movie?
First off, and I don't know if this is true or not, but the first thing that popped in my head is The Others.
Okay. Sure, I've never seen that. But anyway, now how awesome would The Others be if you had watched half of it, and then you stopped and you're like, I don't get it.
Now that one does have a pretty big twist.
Right. So you probably have a different opinion of it if you hadn't finished the story. You know what I mean?
Maybe, but Chrono Trigger is the kind of game that, it's like a Studio Ghibli film or something like that, where, it's going to catch you right off the bat. If you don't think it's quaint how, Chrono, wake up, it's time to go to the fair, here's your 200 gold in allowance, and then you run into the girl and you find her pendant, it's a sweet story, and the next thing you know, your genius best friend throws you back in time, and it's like, well, this is a crazy twist right off the bat. So, I mean, if it didn't catch you right away... I don't think it's gonna.
But I think there's a great thing that happens after Magus. I think like the zeal, and that's the point of the game where you find out all the big information points. You see Lavos's origin. You see like a bunch of main characters' origins, and that's where the dots start to connect. And you're like, oh wow, what an integrated, interesting story. Like you start to see the whole picture and how integrated and interesting that whole picture is.
Now, I do want to kind of amend something, because now that I'm thinking about it, I have a better way to put how I feel about this game. And that is that I am enjoying small sections of it, and I'm enjoying little things about it, but overall, as a whole, I don't feel I'm enjoying it. So, for example, I did love the fair that you go to and the little different things you can do there, and how you can do the chugging contest and then go to the haunted house and try to play those little mini games, or watch the race. I don't know. I participated in the race and I won. I didn't get anything. I don't know. But then the fact that the actions you take at that fair that you think are normal. So, like, for example, I saw an item on a table, so I went to just check it out.
Yeah.
And I ended up picking up this lunch, and I'm like, okay, cool, I found a lunch item. And then there was this girl saying like, oh, my poor kitty, I can't find my kitty. I'm like, well, I know where the cat is, so I go and I try to get the cat, and the cat just keeps running away from me. And I'm like, okay, well, I guess I can't do that yet. So I then continue the story, and then I get held prisoner, and then they start like, well, let's see if he's guilty or not. And they go, well, would you ever steal anything? I said, well, no, of course not. I wouldn't steal something. And they're like, well, we got evidence. And the old man goes, she stole my lunch off the counter. And they're like, oh, well, you wouldn't even help people in need. And I'm like, well, of course I would. I would help. And this little girl comes up, you didn't help me find my kitty. And
well, you see, that's kind of a metaphor for the game, how these seemingly innocuous events can actually lead to more far-reaching consequences, which, obviously the theme gets replayed with the whole time-spanning, thing where, it's the butterfly effect, the flapping the wings and the tsunami and the whole deal. So I think that sequence, it was really well done with the court scene, because actually I've replayed that several times because I've gone through the game a couple times, and you can actually they can vote you guilty, or you can get like a hung jury, or they can actually find you innocent if you do all the right moves. But because there's a corrupt guy that caused you to, sit in jail for, like, say, escorting the princess without a permit or something like that. So he throws you in jail, which, forces you to play that entire sequence of the game. So, it's interesting how I think it was just a very well scripted sequence altogether, because you had no idea that doing all those things would eventually feed into something larger, and I think that's.
But what's interesting about after the Magus battle, like once the Magus battle happens, after that is when you start to see kind of what your effects before the trial and after the trial were. That's when you're going to start to see the effects of what you did earlier in the game start to come to fruition too, and you'll be like, oh wow, so that mattered, and then this happened, and that connected there, right. And the thing I did here made this happen. That's crazy.
Well, and another thing to keep in mind about this game, it's not like Final Fantasy VI or VII, where the joy of the story comes from all these complex, crazy things and discovering all this weird background information about characters. This is a much cleaner, simpler story. It's just a really fun one that, like Colin says, has a little bit of that blow your mind aspect when you start to learn how your actions kind of permeate through this world and affect everything that's happening. And if you're looking for something a little more complex, I can see why you might not dig on it. I personally prefer Chrono Trigger's stories to those other two games, even though they both also have very good stories. But
see, for me, Final Fantasy VI is probably my favorite game of all time, and it may have just been, the time of my life that I was playing it or whatever. But Final Fantasy VI, I thought, was incredible, and actually, when I played it back to back with Chrono Trigger. So I finally won Final Fantasy VI, and then I went to the store and got Chrono Trigger, and I plugged it in, and bam, the graphics are 10 times as good. The battle system, still, I think Chrono Trigger's battle system ranks as probably one of the best JRPG battle systems ever. But I was a little underwhelmed by the story, because it wasn't really epic. It was a lot more smaller events, and it's quaint. Like I said, I compared it to Studio Ghibli before, where it's endearing, the stuff that happens, but it wasn't quite as huge to me. But with the superior graphics and the interconnectivity that comes later from your actions, and just basically the battle system, all those techs and double techs and eventually triple techs, it really made the whole experience of battling fun. Oh, and especially being able to see the enemies on the overworld.
Yeah,
I remember
the animations, of all that stuff. Almost one of the most exciting parts of the game is when you're in the battle system and you have a new triple tech to try out or something. You get to see what is a really cool animation usually for that, for any of them, you know.
And
Luminaire.
It's one of those. Oh yeah, that's the one where Chrono goes up in the air and then sparks come out of him, or shafts of light.
No, it's
come
like
out
this
of him.
big cone of, or big like dome of light kind of comes out.
And then it opens up from the top.
Yeah, and it just fucks everything up on the screen. It's
you know,
like
that
one
was
of those
also
powerful single attacks.
It's also one of the first games that actually used the placement of the enemies in it, because like X cut or certain things would cut in a straight line, so you could actually tactically use abilities based on the arrangement of the enemies, which hadn't been done very much at all then, or really since, except for maybe that Final Fantasy 12, where you actually have the gambits and you actually basically the game plays out itself.
And some of the enemies would migrate, I think, too. So you couldn't always have the advantage of the X or the straight or the diagonal, you know. So you had to wait until it was like the appropriate time to use that attack, too.
Right, and it was an active battle system, so you could actually stand there and take the beating, hoping that they'd, to use a MMO term, pat into the right location.
Yeah.
Patrol.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, for me, obviously, there's... See, I didn't play this game until 2002. So I was 7 years behind already on this, and this is one of my favorite games of all time, if not my favorite game of all time. So I came late to the game, and it was like Half-Life when I came back to that, like just 2 or 3 years ago, the original Half-Life. I was like, wow, this is something special, and I got that, you know, that sense from it. Do you guys think now that this game influenced games past it in that genre? Do you think this was a game changer for the genre, or do you think that this like was just kind of a standout that still is just a standout?
Yeah, I think... Well, go ahead, Ryan.
Well, I was going to say I'm surprised more people didn't emulate the battle system. And, you know, I mean, because I haven't seen anything like that since. You know, it seemed like it was kind of a blip where nobody even attempted to... replicate that formula. I know when Secret of Mana first came out, that had a more action-packed battle system, and a year later, one of the first games ever created in the U.S. by Nintendo was Secret of Evermore, which was a highly modified. It was a same engine, same battle system, but it was created by an American studio. So they saw the Secret of Mana and how that works so well. You know, with the with the summoned spirits and the actual action battles, and so they tried to. I don't want to say reinvent the wheel, but, you know, make gold strike twice. What am I trying to say? They tried to basically take that, that formula and, plug it in again, and it just didn't work the second time. So I'm surprised there weren't more copycats. But Rob, you were...
Yeah, I think the reason we're not seeing more of an influence from this game, even though there should have been, is because it got completely strangled and overwhelmed by the tidal wave that was Final Fantasy VII. And a lot of the decisions that were made in Final Fantasy VII affected the JRPG genre so heavily, and not necessarily in a good way, that it's only now just starting to kind of recover from that.
That's true. Full motion videos, pre-rendered towns.
Yeah, and the kind of mopey main character and the really convoluted plots.
Yeah, that's true.
I like the convoluted plots. Those are fun for me. It's just playing the JRPGs to get those plots just doesn't appeal to me anymore, unfortunately.
Well, I like the convoluted plots too. Like I said, I really liked the story of Final Fantasy VII, but the games that tried to emulate that, in my opinion, didn't do nearly as good of a job, and they really scared me away from the genre until, honestly, the last month when Ni no Kuni came out.
And you're just loving that, right?
I am, yeah. I want to talk about that next week because I'm getting the full game. I've played the demo twice now, so...
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I've seen the Marco MK from Better Games first brought it up to me, and I looked at the title of it, Nico Kuki Kuni. It's like, nah, I think I'll pass. But then I started actually seeing
the terrible name.
Then I started seeing like the gameplay, and it's like, oh, it's Studio Ghibli, art, which I'm pretty fond of anyway. And I don't generally watch anime, but I'll watch any Studio Ghibli film just because it seems to have that, great art style that's not quite Disney, but it's got, a fully fleshed out, it's not, I guess, angsty is what I tend to have a...
But it's dark
all these...
too in some weird way,
Yeah.
The Studio Ghibli animation style. It's got this weird, like...
Yeah, that's true.
Dark, childhood nightmare kind of thing.
Yeah, kind of like a Grimm's fairy tale rather than a Disney movie.
The first one I saw actually at Studio Ghibli, interesting enough, was Princess Mononoke, and that's a very violent and dark tale. So we're getting a little off topic, though. I just realized when I said saying that. But yeah, Studio Ghibli is amazing, and I mean they're like Akira Toriyama, who did all the art for this, who's a Dragon Ball guy. I appreciate his art a lot too, because I was a big Dragon Ball fan back in the day.
His art is fantastic in this game, and his big style with like the big chunky hair and just the way the features works so well with the 8-bit characters, because you don't need a lot of detail to get their personalities across. Mm-hmm. I mean, he did a really good job with the art design in Chrono Trigger.
Yeah, I mean, there's like emotion in the faces, and there's even like that game. How much do we want to? Let's talk about this real quick. How much can we spoil right now, guys? Jordan hasn't played it. It's I think 18 years after it came out. We can probably spoil some of it, but I don't want to spoil it for you, Jordan. But
no, I gave you complete permission.
Okay, so when the main character dies.
I know Chrono dies. Okay. You have told me Chrono dies in the past.
I just, that's like got to be the biggest spoiler you could say about a game. You know what I mean?
Right.
It's fake. You know what I mean? Like a fake spoiler. But no, when Chrono dies in Chrono Trigger, you have an option to play the rest of the game without him. You can beat the game without Chrono. Which, by the way, which I want to talk about too after this, is the 13 possible endings of the game. But one of the things you can do is you can get him back, but to get him back, you have to get this doll, and you have to do this mission game thing at the carnival where.
Interesting side story. That carnival tent has Biggs and Wedge in it, and Biggs and Wedge are the soldiers that escorted Terra at the start of Narshe, and they were also members of Avalanche, the terrorist group in Final Fantasy VII. So those are two little reoccurring, Squaresoft themes that were in there. But go on.
Biggs and Wedge were also in the Alliance, the Rebel Alliance.
There you go. That must be where it's from. You mean from Star Wars?
Yeah. Wedge Antilles and Biggs was, Biggs used to shoot Womp rats back on Tatooine. Oh yeah.
Oh, I did not catch the reference, but I never realized that.
Tatooine, Jordan. Tatooine.
What did I say?
Dantooine.
No, not Dantooine. I didn't say Dantooine. I know Dantooine. Dantooine's where the fake rebel base is, and that's not an adequate thing enough to destroy, so we have to destroy Alderaan.
So the tent in Chrono Trigger, you were saying.
If it wasn't obvious enough that we have a game podcast and we're not nerds, then there you go. No, yeah. So the tent in Chrono Trigger. So you have to emulate his emotions, and there's all these different emotions. I mean, and for an 8-bit game, it comes across really clearly. It's interesting. Chrono has like sad, happy, surprised, funny, laughing, and it all works really well in that old style, just because the art is so good, like Rob was saying.
When you don't know your controls in the beginning of the game, and you try to do that, and you spend your silver points on that little mini game, and you don't know how to do it, yeah, that's not fun. I'm glad you told me that, because now I will map my stuff. I'm not playing with a controller. I think I'm actually going to map it to the controller and see how that goes. I'm playing with a mouse and the keyboard. So. Oh
yeah, it actually is a pretty simple mini game once you get the controls right for it. But that is essential. That mini game is plot essential if that's where you're going with it. Now, what I do want to talk about. How many endings have you guys seen? Let's just go round robin real quick. And are you guys aware of them all? Rob, I'll start with you.
One.
One. Okay. Ryan.
Less than half. I'd say probably 3 or 4 of them.
Okay, what ones have you seen? What endings have you seen?
Oh, it's been so long, but most of them were just variations on the same thing, unless you.
Right. They're very hard. It's very hard to get the different endings,
Right. Well, most of it comes from who you had in your party at the end, doesn't it?
Most of it does.
See, because I always played. Like every single time I've actually given Chrono Trigger as a gift before, and it's like when I gave it to him, it's like I'll be interested to see who your finishing party is, and sure enough, they picked the same one as me: Chrono, Marl, and Frog for the Arc Impulse, which was actually named something different on the DS.
Oh, really? See, I always like Chrono, Robo, and Magus.
Oh.
So, spoiler alert: Magus can join your party later, but he doesn't. Or you can kill him too. But I've seen Jordan. You haven't seen an ending, obviously, yet.
I have not. I know Chrono dies, but that's because you spoiled that for me like 6 months ago.
Oh, okay. Chrono dies, but you can bring him back, which is a really fun, really cool side mission. But you don't have to bring him back. There's 13 endings of the game. Now I've only seen a couple myself, and I've never seen the big dramatic ones because those are very hard. And I also I can't not beat the game with Chrono. I can't do it. Can't do it.
I know. I didn't even know it was optional not to bring him back. I mean, when he died and they said there's a possibility to bring him back, it's like, well, geez, I gave him all my best gear. Of course I'm going to bring him back. He's wearing all my I pumped him full of power tabs and everything.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah, no, you can totally not bring him back and just go, because you can beat the game at so many different points from that point on the game. If you just go to the floating dark tower that appears, you can just go and beat the game.
Black Omen.
Now, there's a way, and I don't know, the most interesting one, the hardest one, is apparently on your New Game Plus, right from the first time you go into the carnival, you can beat the game, right?
Yeah, I forget how you do it. It's something like... when you restart the game, you go ahead. You remember it better than me.
I think you go to like the fair where Luca's your genius friend, and I think you go to her machine or whatever, and I think you already have the pendant, maybe.
That's right.
And that's what it was. So you get transported immediately to Lavos, and you fight Lavos right there and then. But you have a party
as Chrono.
Yeah,
I think so, actually. And that's the hardest ending to get, because it's an incredibly tough battle. And so if you beat him, you then get transported to the end of time, which you've seen, Jordan, right? Yeah, you must have seen. So you get transported to the end of time, but instead of just the guy at the light post... he's the guy at the light post is there, and then when you go into the back room, I believe. Now I haven't done this. This is all from stuff I've read about it. You go into the back room, and all of the devs of the game have an NPC there, and they're all there to congratulate you, and you can talk to each one of them, like all individually. You can go up to each one dev who has a NPC for themselves to be like, congratulations, you got the hardest ending, essentially.
Huh.
Really?
Yeah.
Interesting.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. But there are so many different endings. A lot of them are, like Ryan said,
just variations on the same thing. I mean, you won the day and it's happy, you know?
Well, there's the one ending where you didn't win the day and Lavos destroys the future.
Oh,
really?
Yeah, technically.
How do you do that and win?
You don't.
Yeah, I think that happens anytime you game over, doesn't it? Don't they do that animation?
I guess they consider that one of the endings, though. Mm-hmm. Where he rises. No, there's... I gotta look it up, but I think there's that animation of him rising, throwing his spikes out and shattering, and then there's like some scene, I think, where I don't know how to get that ending, but where there's like one of like the people in the future is talking. Like there's a little scene of some people in the future talking about what's happening or what's going to happen or something like that. So I gotta look that up though. It's been a while since I've seen all the ending descriptions, but I think that's. I mean, I don't know. Maybe Rob or maybe one of you guys can answer this question for me. You know, when this game came out, how typical was it for games to have 13 there's no game has 13 endings.
No.
What game has 13 possibilities of an ending? You know what I mean? Like. It's very rare, even today. So, is this something? This is something that made that game special too? Are we saying, or is this something that was done relatively?
I guess I could look it up really quick, but I'm not aware of a large number of games. I think some of the Ultimate games had multiple endings. I might be wrong about that, but it definitely wasn't an everyday occurrence.
From a replay perspective, that is one of those few games that I have replayed multiple times. That I put it on my docket every couple of years. I replay Chrono Trigger just because, there is a lot of open-endedness at the end. I know Final Fantasy VI had the same sort of thing where after you get to a certain point in the plot, it opens up and you can basically go and fight the boss anytime you want. And that's really the best part of it, because up to that point, both games, Final Fantasy VI and Chrono Trigger, were basically linear in the fact that you could only progress the plot by doing one thing. But after what is it that happens? That I think it's after Zeal, isn't it? That it opens up, and from that point on, it's after you get the Epoch, the flying time machine.
Well, it's open. It's still pretty open between then, but you have to try. It's just harder to travel around, you know.
Oh, right. Oh, yeah, that's right. Because eventually you come across the flying time machine, so you don't have to use the portals anymore. You can actually just manually flip into any time, but it doesn't have wings until later on.
Right. So they make it easier and easier to travel around the whole world, the whole multiple world maps, you know.
Right.
Wait, is this Chrono Trigger?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, that's awesome. Because I keep getting lost looking for Mystic Mountain. I always forget where it is in 6500
I know what you mean. Where it's I remember exactly that part where it's like I could never remember that either. You have to find that little squiggly path right into the mountains.
Yeah.
Yeah, but like the proper mountain, like I'm lost there. Like I got lost there when I got done with getting my rod back. I was stuck there for like 20 minutes. Like, where is this stupid place?
Where did you get back?
He said he got his rod stuck.
Yeah, that happens, you know. And there are people out there who would be willing to talk to you about it and help you with that problem. Well, anyway, guys, let's go round robin real quick. Say our final thoughts about this game, and then we're going to wrap this up. Obviously, I think we've come to a consensus that, you know, most of us think this is a great game. Jordan, you really finish it, and then I would love your opinion on the full thing, you know. So, Rob, I'll start with you.
Yeah, I think it's a great game. I think it's one of the best JRPGs ever made, right up there with Final Fantasy VI and Secret of Mana and games like that. So definitely gets 2 thumbs up from me.
Great. Thank you. Ryan, what do you think? Final thoughts?
Yeah, I feel basically the same as Rob. I think the art style for its time, it just made the game timeless. I mean, it's still as pretty today as it will be 20 years from now, just because they did such an excellent job. And the soundtrack, you know, I mean, a lot of those songs that you hear just bring you right back to that place and time. So it's memorable, and I think the battle system was simply excellent. You know, I mean, it gave the whole genre a much needed boost of action. You know, because before that, you know, the constant random battles could just kind of drain on you, where it's like you actually dreaded going to the overworld because you didn't know if you had to fight 2 or 20 guys on your way back to town. You know.
Right.
That's why I like Repellent and Pokemon. You could buy that stuff and you'd get 20 steps. Just stock up on that. No random battles in grass.
Yeah, I do want to say, Ryan, you did bring up an interesting point that we didn't touch on, and we'll do it another time because we're kind of out of time. But the music in the game is absolutely fantastic. I did forget to even talk about that. It's so memorable, the music in that game. I still hum it. I find myself humming some of the tunes randomly, like in my car driving sometimes. So, Jordan, what do you think of the game? Impressions from being 3/4 of the way through.
I think that it has good parts, but overall as a whole, I'll finish it because I said I would, but I don't think I would if I didn't have the obligation to. Like I said, if you like role-playing games like this, the JRPG style, the time base is interesting, the battle system is interesting, and the individual stuff they have going on is interesting. But overall, the overall bit just hasn't grabbed me. But maybe I will change my mind here once I've actually beaten it. So
maybe now that you're not on a time restraint, you can actually drink it in, because I mean there's a lot to see there, and I mean by your own admission, it looks great, it plays great, but I mean all the pieces just haven't fallen into place for you. So everyone's got entitled to their opinion, but you're not right. Sorry.
Yeah, I bought
the internet and history does not agree with you.
I was wondering where you were going to go with that. You're like everyone's entitled to their opinion, but
wrong. Sure. No, I bought the puzzle. I bought the jigsaw puzzle because the picture on the front was great, and I'm looking at all these individual pieces, but I just can't figure out how to. Like, I've got the border done, but I don't.
You can step back the whole thing if you beat it one day, Jordan, and you step back and you look at all. You're like, wow, that's awesome. It's really a thing to look at, So anyway, what I think of it, I think it's one of the greatest games ever made. It's one of my personal favorite games I've ever played. I think the music, I think the art, I think the gameplay, the battle systems, the animations, I think they're all fantastic. I play that game like once a year. My last playthrough was on my iPhone, actually, which was all touch, which is how I brushed up on it for this podcast as well.
Oh, yeah. That is really cool that they have it on portable devices now.
And it's so well suited for it. It's such a great way to do it. Like even the thing we were talking about, where you slash diagonal or slash across or whatever, or X. I mean, that's a touch option, and so they really made it clean, neat, and made it feel like a game designed for the platform. So, anyway. I want to thank you all for coming on today. So thank you very much, Ryan, for coming on the show today.
Oh, thanks for having me back.
Yeah, a pleasure. Rob, thanks for coming on, man.
Fuck you, Colin.
And Jordan, thanks, man.
Thank you for coming on, Colin. I'd like to extend that from the Game Out Loud podcast.
Oh, thank you. The host so rarely gets thanked. That feels good inside my heart. Space, or the space where my heart would be. Anyway, thanks again, guys. It's been a great show. So if you guys like the show, please reach out to us. You can always reach us at gameoutloudpodcast@gmail.com. You can also tweet us at what is a very active Twitter at gameoutloudcast. And of course, you can find us on bagofgames.com. So we will see you next week. Hope you enjoyed the show, and have a good week, guys.